Backing up your CenterPoint accounting and payroll data, as well as your user settings, is an important process in CenterPoint to prevent data loss. It is also a very simple process. To back up your database, you would go to File, Backup, Backup Database. At the top of the screen, you'll select the database you want to back up. It'll default to whatever database you have open, or you could click on the down arrow to select a different database. Then you'll be prompted to enter in the Save To path, or where you want that backup to go, what folder you want it to go in. We do not recommend that you back this up to your local hard drive. We do recommend an external source such as a USB drive, an external hard drive, a different path on your network, or even a completely offsite storage such as a cloud. To choose the path, you click on the Browse button and then go ahead and browse to the location that you want that backup, choose the folder, and click Select Folder. The reason why we don't want you to back up to your hard drive is because if your computer crashes, it will likely result in data loss, and that may include both of your actual data and your backup data. It'll fill in automatically the Save To file name with the name of the database and then the date at the end of it. And if you happen to back up it more than one time within a day, it'll add a sequence number to the end. You can override that. You'll also be prompted to back up your user files, and those include your report favorites, your preference settings, and any of your screen settings. So if you want to back those up, you can check the box here. It will be backing up only the user settings from the computer that you are doing the backup from. You also are allowed to have the system warn you with two different types of warnings. The first warning is you can have it give you a warning when the number of backups in the location that you're storing the backups exceeds a certain value. Okay, if you set that to 0, then it disables that warning. Other than that, you could set it to whatever number you want. When the other warning is when the size of the backups in the location exceeds a particular value, and you could set that value, and you could do it in megabytes or gigabytes. You can also open up the backup location, and it'll list all the files that are in that location. I don't currently have any in my location. Before I click backup, at the bottom left, you'll notice a checkbox which will allow you to have the screen close automatically when the backup is complete. Otherwise, it leaves it open, which you might want if you have multiple databases to back up. I'm going to click backup, and it completes the backup and gives me a confirmation message. One of the options we have in CenterPoint is to store documents in either transactions, employee records, customer records, or vendor records. And if you attach documents, you have two options. You can store them in the database, and if you chose that option, then backing up the database will also back up those documents. The other option is to store them in a file repository. And if you chose that option, then you need to back up those attachments using a manual process. That manual process is under File and Backup File Repository. Again, you're going to be asked what path you want to save it to. And once again, this should be something other than a path on your local hard drive. It'll also give you the name. It'll default a name in there, which you can overwrite. And it also gives you the options for warnings, and those two warnings, once again, being the number of backups in that location, and the other warning being the size of the backups in the location. I'm going to click backup, and it backs up my file repository. Underneath File and Backup, you also can back up user files. So if you did the backup and you decided to back up the user files, it only backed up the user files from the computer that you initiated the backup on. So on all of the other computers, you might still want to back up their user files. So you would go to each computer individually and go to File and Backup User Files, choose the path that you want to back up those files to, and then the name of the file. And it defaults a name of local files and the date on it. And if you did it more than one time within a day, it would add a sequence number. I'm going to click backup and then click OK. And then finally, if you're integrated or if you have our payroll installed, you'll know that we integrate with a company called Atrix to produce your tax forms. Every time you produce a tax form, it creates a history file of that. And they're not backed up automatically. So underneath File and Backup, there is an option to back up your Atrix history. When you select that, you'll see if you have different employers, you might have different data files for each employer, but you'll select the data file that you want to do the backup for and click OK, and then it'll ask you the location that you want for that backup. So we'll browse to that, click Open, and then click Save, and it'll go ahead and back that up. Finally, I just want to talk about two of the preferences that have to do with backing up. So we're going to go to File and Preferences. Under Preferences, I'm going to go to General, and then we're going to go to Backup. And I'm going to click on the Application tab to set these. One of the first preferences is that every time you so you're not prompted to back up the database when you exit it by default. If you do want it to prompt you to back it up, you can set this preference to yes. If you, at the bottom of the screen, if you want it to display, and you can see in my bottom right-hand corner of my screen, it displays the last date the backup was performed. So if you want it to display that, you'll say yes here. If you don't want it to display that, you can say no, and then save your preferences.